What's up, guys? Welcome to the podcast today. Today, we're going to jump into some ideas on training, and I'll give you kind of a little rule that I sort of tend to follow anytime I roll with someone brand new. And by brand new, I don't mean just brand new people, although it does apply to that, but also just people that I don't know. And this is a rule, as I'll explain, that's been learned the hard way, as I think most of our best rules or our best ideas and lessons come from. And I'm going to share it with you, and it'll probably still not, you'll probably have to learn it the hard way yourself, but hopefully I can maybe help curb the amount of negative impact that it has on you long term. So we'll get into that in just a second. But again, first, thanks to our sponsors for helping make this podcast happen. Charlotte's Web. If you guys have never used CBD products before, I encourage you to try them. Again, the first time I ever heard about CBD, I remember hearing about it. I think it was on Joe Rogan talking about a product and all the benefits that it was supposed to have. I was like, I don't know about all that. Right. And so, again, for me, I was like, I'm not so sure. Then I started taking a product, a CBD product. Originally, it was a balm onto a muscle group that was really sore. It was on my back, actually. And I remember, like, within several hours, I've had a lot of relief from it, which was nice. And then I was like, well, let's actually try this stuff and give it a fair try, right? Like, actually see what I think about it. And I started using a product that was made locally. It was pretty good sometimes, not so good sometimes, and eventually sort of found my way to Charlotte's Web. And again, I like the product because of the consistency of the product that's in it, and I also like the fact that I've been there and met these people that make the product, and their devotion to quality and consistency is unmatched in the CBD community, right? And one thing to sort of share with you guys, because I know I talk about this product all the time, I've recently started alternating a little bit. Um, so I use it primarily now on my like on days where like I train really hard and I want a little bit more for recovery purposes, but I've stopped doing it like every single day. So I'll kind of like alternate back and forth with like when I want to like kind of recover a little bit more, I'll take it. And I'm trying some different supplements out along with that, which, after I kind of play around with them and sort of get a vibe for how they work, I'll share them with you guys as always. I'm kind of always doing something different, like a little gadget that I'm trying for training. I'm always trying different supplements and seeing their effects. And, again, one of the ones that's been really consistent, that's been in my regular routine, whether it's, alternating or there on a daily basis, whatever, has been CBD. And so I encourage you guys to try it out, see for yourself how it affects you, and kind of go from there. Again, if you want to try it out and save 20% in the process, go to charlottesweb.com. And then the promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20, and that's 20% off the order for whatever you buy. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Epic Roll. If you guys have never been on Matt's website, Epic Roll's website, you can do so by going to epicrollbjj.com. It's been fun. So one of the things that was kind of interesting is when I was meeting all you guys out in Vegas recently for the ADCC championships, I noticed that several of you guys had Epic Roll gear on. And I actually asked a couple people, I was like, hey, where'd you get that? And they're like, from the podcast. I was like, perfect. I'm glad you enjoy it, And again, I ask people, because again, I'm always curious about people's experience. So for instance, this morning I was talking to one of our brand new members at the gym. He doesn't even do my class. He does boxing, but I've seen him walking around. I was like, hey man, what's your name? Introduce him. What's your experience like? How's everything been? Because, like, it's my place, right? I want to know like if everything's good or if there's something that we can do to improve. And so I was asking the people that I saw this Epic Roll stuff, and those that said, yeah, I got it from the podcast. I was like, hey, what's your experience been like with the product? How do you like the shirt? How do you like their stuff that you got? And it's all positive. Like, oh, I really like it. I'm actually wearing a Epic Roll shirt right now. And again, I tend to wear their products not because I'm like sponsored by them so much as I just like them. I'm actually in the process now of trying to get a new batch of no-gi gear made with Matt. Again, because I think he makes good products. And so I like sharing them. And so, guys, if you want to check out any of Matt's stuff, whether it be the t-shirts, rash guards, shorts, gis, you name it, he's got it. If it's jiu-jitsu related, you can do that at epicrollbjj.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu for 15% off. And guys, if you are a man who needs to step up their grooming game, or you know a person that's a man in their life that needs to step up their grooming game, which is a real possibility, because sometimes guys need to, they need to do a little bit better job on that stuff. I encourage you to check out Manscaped's website. Check out Manscaped. I know they're kind of like this really big popular company right now with all this stuff, but they make really good products. If you came through my house and you like went through my bathroom and stuff like that, you would actually see there's stuff like you could actually see it being used, that it's there. During the last camp that we had, I invited people over to my home to watch fights because, we had the fights going and I wanted to see them. It was the Kamara Usman fight. And I was like, I want to watch that fight. And so I invited everybody that was at the camp. I invited them over just like, hey, come watch the fights here with my house, And so they got to come down into to my home and see all the books everywhere. And then one of them went into the bathroom, and in the bathroom, there's like Manscaped soaps and all that stuff because I actually really like the smell of the stuff. And one of the guys, like after we were leaving, he was like, "You actually do use their products, right?" I was like, "I had told you, like, I don't." Again, my integrity just doesn't allow me to sell you something I'm not using. I'm a terrible liar, and I just can't do it. So therefore, like if I don't use it, I'm not going to push it on you guys because it's not my thing. There was a product that I got offered just recently. Another one. Again, I talk about these because it's like it's just bad. It's just like some of the stuff I get offered by, but we won't get in that today. But anyway, if you would like to check out some of their products, I've used their trimmer, which is really good. I use it on my beard. I'll use it on any other part of my body that needs its hair trimmed. I've used everything from their nose trimmers, their soaps, their colognes, everything. All the stuff smells really good, has a nice, clean, like manly smell to it. I know that we're not supposed to use those ginger terms like manly and womanly, but we all know what we mean, right? Like if you want to smell like a man, like here's a fun story. I got a guy sent me a beard product once. It was like one of those beard oils. And I don't tend to really use beard oils that much. I know some guys really like them, but I was like, I'll try this out. And so I used this beard oil, and I felt like I was wearing perfume on my face. It was so florally, I was like, this is terrible. This smells like something I would expect Jess to wear, not me. I want something that smells like a man, right? Like, and well, not smells like a man because sometimes men stink, but like smells like a man if he's trying to smell good. Let's say it that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, side tangent, but check them out. I really like their stuff. It's a cool company, make a lot of really good stuff. And if you want to get it and save 20% off in the process, you can do so by going to their website at manscaped.com. And when you buy whatever you're going to buy, just put Jiu-Jitsu 20 at the checkout and you'll get 20% off and free shipping. It's a good deal. And guys, also, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to our Patreon at the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. So you put in patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And when you subscribe, you'll get access to a ton of really cool content that we've accumulated over the last several years. And you get a special bonus that we've recently put into it, which is a warm-up / cool down / stretching routine for jiu-jitsu. So to tell you where it came from, back in was it actually last year, we had a camp come out to my gym and we did our inaugural jiu-jitsu camp. And during that camp, I had Eugene put together a short warm-up series. And I did this primarily because of the fact that one of the questions that people come in and have jiu-jitsu is they're tight, their bodies are rigid, their back hurts, their hips hurt, everything hurts. Everything's tight because we don't really live. If you're working day-to-day normal stuff, you don't live a lifestyle that's conducive to being nice and mobile and having like a really supple frame that can easily stretch and move into positions. So I said, show some stretches and some movements that people could use to, improve that. And of course, when I talk to Eugene about these things, it's so funny. You guys don't see this, but Eugene is like, it's almost like watching like maybe like one of those movies like Limitless or The Matrix or something where I'm asking him for like a couple stretches and all of a sudden his eyes expand and get really big. And it's just like, there's just too much to comprehend. And to his credit, there's a lot of variation to that. But I was like, hey, let's bring it down to 20 minutes. That's your limitation. Whatever the best stuff that you could squeeze into 20 minutes, that's what we're going to do. If you can't get into 20 minutes, we're cutting it off there. And so he came up with a 20-minute routine. We've used it several times with people. And every time someone uses it, they walk away saying, man, I feel really good, right? And it's primarily because it targets the specific imbalances that we have with jiu-jitsu. Again, he is a doctor of physical therapy, and he's also a jiu-jitsu black belt. So he knows what we're doing better than just about anybody, right? He knows what the body's doing and what these muscles are doing and their relationship with each other. And so it's a really good routine. 20 minutes. Again, you could do that easily anytime you need a warm-up routine, if you need to like do it for a competition, for class, and you could also use it for an actual stretching routine. You would just do some of these holds a little bit longer. So after maybe at nighttime when you get home and you're done training and you take a shower, your muscles are all nice and warm, just, square a little space away in your living room, pop the video on, and then boom, you can just follow along. And then once you get that down to almost, into memory, then you can just make the stretches longer and you don't even have to go off of the video. So anyway, if you want to check that out and get all the content that we've been putting up, plus the bonuses that are included, like the warm-up routine, check it out at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And then last but not least, you can join my Chew Crew email list and get access to my daily email, as well as exclusive offers that I do not share anywhere else. They're only to my email followers. And you typically will get first crack at everything that I do. Like, for instance, the camps that I was talking about, the first camp that I ever did and the second one that I did, both sold out in less than 24 hours off of one email that was sent to the people into the email list. And again, I try to make them fun, like the email that goes out in 2 days. Well, 2 days at the time of recording this, it's since been gone, is about I share some funny stories. So it's about a story from my childhood about when I watched my buddy's father cry and then sort of get into a catatonic state because of a lottery ticket. And then there's obviously a lesson for jiu-jitsu wrapped up in that. And again, so it's fun stuff. It's not just like, again, I sell stuff in it. I'll let you know ahead of time. I do offer my products and all that stuff that's there. This is what I do for a living, but I try to share fun ideas and stories and stuff like that you may not see in other places. So if you want to check that out, you can do so by going to my website at chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. And when you sign up, upon signing up, you'll get access to 3 free ebooks. And then you'll also get access to a video that goes along with them. And then you can study those and use them. Great stuff. And then again, at any point, should you not want to be getting my emails, you can simply unsubscribe, and that's that. And so, guys, with all that out of the way, let's jump into the podcast. So today's podcast is at least going to start off, because again, we go off the rails sometimes, is at least going to start off with this idea. And this is my rule when I roll with brand new people, that you never roll with someone that you've never rolled with before as if they're going to abide by the same rules of engagement that you're used to in your gym. So this kind of comes about because recently there was a video that kind of, went around a little bit in the jiu-jitsu circles. And it involved a 140-pound teenage blue belt, and they were up against a supposed 265-pound purple belt. And the father/coach of the teenage son of the teenage blue belt basically said, this guy comes in, and there's a video of it's sort of security camera type footage. This kid throws a really loose triangle up on him, and this big guy picks him up off the ground and slams him down, brutally slams this kid on his head and gives him a bit of a concussion. Now, this is an example of why you have to be careful, because again, for any of us that train for more than a little bit, if a purple belt rolled up into our gym and we're doing jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu, we'll talk more about the self-defense element in just a bit. If we're doing jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu, we expect that you would understand this as a purple belt. Surely you would understand not to slam or anything else, right? Because that's not what we're doing. We're doing jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu. And I share this lesson with you because this is one I had to learn myself the hard way. There's been times where, I remember rolling with a new student, relatively new. And at one point I threw a position up on them, and they picked me up off the ground, and they were getting ready to slam me into the ground. I said, whoa, stop. And they were like, what? I was like, what are you getting ready to do? And they're like, I was going to slam you. I was like, why are you going to slam me? And they're like, well, I watched Rampage Jackson, and he slammed guys and knocked him out. And so I was going to I watched that. And so I was going to try to slam you. And I said, well, okay, so what happened in those fights? He's like, well, they got knocked out. And I was like, yeah. Are you trying to knock me out? We're rolling. And they stopped and thought about it. They were literally just in this fight or flight state because they're new. And they were just going off of whatever they saw on TV, right? I'm going to slam this guy. I've also had situations where guys would come into the gym, and most gyms, you just don't go for heel hooks in the gi. Some do, some don't, but most don't. And the reality is because most of the time, the main reason is because the competitions don't allow them. But I also think there is something to the fact that your leg is kind of wrapped up in the fabric, and it's a lot. Leg locks are a weird thing when they get locked up in the gi, and I don't tend to prefer them, But anyway, so you get into that situation, and anyways, they're rolling, and a guy sits back, I think he was like a blue belt or something, sits back and he proceeds to get ready to heel hook me. And I can feel the tension in his body wrapping up around my heel. And it wasn't going to be a fun one. It wasn't going to be like, hey, I'm like going to catch this and begin to apply proper pressure. It was going to be just a rip, which honestly wouldn't probably, it would have probably popped my ankle more so than my knee, but it would have tweaked things up. And I was like, so I just tapped out really quick. And it didn't have proper braking mechanics, but it still would have tweaked things up, right? And so these are just a couple of the many examples I've had where, I've had to be very careful because things were about to be a little wild or someone was not engaging by the same rules that I was used to. And this has happened numerous times. And so my encouragement to you guys is if you are a white belt, blue belt, or even if you just don't travel that much, anytime you roll with someone that you've never rolled with before, always proceed with a slight level of caution, right? It doesn't mean you can't roll with them. It doesn't mean whatever. Just you have to be ready for the unexpected because you just don't know. You don't know who that person is. You don't know what kind of baggage they're bringing in. You don't know what they're there for. And so you always have to come in a little on the cautious side because it'll surprise you. And again, sometimes this happens to me even to this day. There's been times even as a black belt where I expect, like I'm talking to the guy and everything's cool. And then we're getting ready to roll. And as soon as we roll, it goes from like 0 to like 3,000, just like 100%. And you're like, whoa, like I thought we were just like having a nice casual, like not casual, but I thought we were having like a nice, like spirited roll. And then like in 2 seconds, it's like, it's like snarling and heavy breathing. And like, you can just feel the rigidity in the muscles. I'm like, oh, so that's what we're doing today. Okay. Got it. And so that's the idea. Now, the one sort of side tangent that I'll get into, and then I'll throw it over to Eugene, is that I know anytime this kind of thing comes up, right? And it's come up in the Instagram posts that I've made about this stuff, is people in the self-defense community will do this thing where it's like your little brother that doesn't get a lot of attention. They like, because like the it is, it's like, because the self-defense community. And by the way, if you're a self-defense person, I'm not pooping on you. Just stick with me for a second. But what ends up happening a lot of times is the sport is so captivating, right? Like you think of the ADCC championships, like whether you were a sport or self-defense person, like everybody was out there watching that and enjoying themselves because the sport is captivating. Sure. Right. Seeing sport is captivating. I mean, it's why we watch people throw around balls in a field, right? It's captivating to us. It's fun. And so it has drama. There's conflict resolution, right? We love to see conflict, and we have sport, which is just conflict. So, a lot of times with the self-defense stuff, it doesn't get much attention. And so anytime I see something that relates to the self-defense guy, it's like, see, they should be doing what we're doing, like we're doing it the right way, that kind of thing. And I feel like it's like the little brother that doesn't get much attention, because maybe they're just not, like, for whatever reason, doing something that's worthy of attention. But with the self-defense stuff, I agree that, people should always be taught some of the fighting elements of jiu-jitsu, right? Like, hey, if someone lifts you up, you need to hook the leg to prevent that and, all this stuff. But again, here's the deal. The rules of engagement will dictate what you expect. So back in the day, I used to fight MMA, and I still spar sometimes with like fighting stuff. And if I'm in fight mode, like where I'm expecting a punch, my jiu-jitsu is different, and even my perception is different. Like if I get punched in the face, the way that I perceive that punch is very different. Like it's okay. It's like it doesn't hurt so bad. But if I'm not expecting it, if I'm not ready, and someone was to punch me in the face, it's like, hold on a second. Like in the middle of a roll, if someone decks me on an accident because I go for a sweep and their hand just so happens to like, bludgeon me a little bit in the mouth, I'm like, hold on a second. That one hurt. Give me a second here. Or, either that or, maybe we keep going. But if it's a real good one, I'm like, just give me a second. Whereas in a fight, I expect that. So I'm going to play differently. And so with the rules of engagement in a jiu-jitsu setting versus jiu-jitsu setting, you don't expect that. Even like me, I've gone to several self-defense based gyms with the name Gracie across the side, right? Which tells you what they're about, which is completely fine. I think it's good stuff. And when I would go to these gyms, like if I was to go in there and during our rolls where we're doing jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu, if I was to just start punching them because that's what could happen in the streets, they would be like, whoa, what are you doing, Chewy? We're rolling, right? And I'm like, well, I could do this in the streets. You got to be ready, right? And so it's just not a good argument for the situation. Again, it's good to know those things, but at the same time, when you're expecting one thing and you get another, that's the problem. And so my advice, encouragement to you is never expect someone to engage by the same rules, especially on those first couple of rules where you're kind of feeling the person out. It allows you to get to know them a little bit first. And then you can maybe let your guard down and play a little bit differently, or maybe you have to turn it up a little bit because of the way they are rolling, but it'll give you a good read on who they are and how they're trying to roll with you. So just an idea to chew on, just one of my rules when it comes to rolling with brand new people that I've never rolled with.
So I did see the video. I'm wondering, do you know if that was that guy's first roll in the gym? Was it like the first? Because
I think
heard
it was his first day. I don't know if it's his first roll, but I think it was his first day there.
Okay, so like what I was thinking was like, did he give you? And from what I think I read, like I guess it was the dad said like there wasn't really any inclination. He was pretty chill,
Yeah,
through the drilling or the technique portion of the class. And good for them for having cameras. Number one, because that's really important. I think every gym should. And I think obviously we have cameras at our gym, but it's very important just because you never know, and you want to make sure you got kind of all the you want to see what's going on. Your eyes can't be, as a coach, you can't see everything. I think it's a good idea because you don't know people, like you said. You have to kind of almost err on the side of caution. Do you think that like that could have been prevented in any way? Do you think there's anything that could have been done on the front end, and some ideas from you are like, hey, you're signing the waiver, and the waiver it says in jiu-jitsu class, no slamming, no this, no that, and make sure they sign it and read it? Is that something that could be, because every gym's got a little variability on rules. Some allow, like you said, heel hooks in the gi, some don't. Some say white belts can heel hook or white belts cannot, whatever. Do you think on your end, as like a business owner, is there anything you would have done differently? Or like if you see a big guy come in, you're like, let me roll with him first just to kind of get a feel for what this guy's capable of. And then I'll see if like, hey, I want to protect some of my younger students or this or that. Obviously, you're a young kid and you're a blue belt. You've got some skill. You've been on the mats for a little while. But, again, there's a strength and supposedly a skill differential there with that guy being a purple belt. So anything on your end you do as a business owner?
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about 100-pound difference. I mean, that's a big difference. So here's a couple things. So first off, like, I wouldn't want to have to like put in like, I don't want to have it almost like look like an amusement park ride. No slamming, no this, no that, whatever. Because I understand it's just like one of those things where it's like, maybe for the new white belts, but you expect a purple belt. Like you should get this, right? This shouldn't be new to you. But the one thing that I do as a coach is, and maybe I should explicitly lay this out for the other coaches, but I think they do this sort of naturally at the gym, is I either watch the guy like a hawk the first couple rounds, or I roll with him first. So like if I'm not rolling that day, I'll just watch him. But if I'm rolling, I roll with him first. And otherwise I try to watch him like a hawk to see how they roll, because there have been times where like we've had some guys that came in that were maybe a little too rough with our women. Yeah. And so I've had to like, hey man, you got to chill, bro. Like, like, cause again, it's like, it's like, they'll have like a woman who's like 110 pounds, and then you got this 200-pound guy, and you're like, hey man, chill out. Like she's 110 pounds. Like, I don't need her broken because you spazzed out on her, and so I typically roll with people first if I can. And if I'm not rolling for whatever reason, then I will typically watch them roll and then kind of get a measure of who they are. Because usually after a roll or two, you kind of get an idea. Okay, this is this person, and they're not bad, Like even this, I came in Sunday for the open mat, and there was a guy there that I'd never rolled with before. He came from another gym, and he's actually trained there before, from what I understood. He came to one of the open mats, and he's good, very smooth roll, very, very, very fun. But since I'd never rolled with him before, and I never seen him in the gym before, I watched him. Like the first round, I was like stretching out when I got there, and I was like watching him roll. And then after I realized he was good and smooth and he wasn't like going crazy, I kind of was like, okay, he's cool. He's safe, but I always kind of do that. And I think that's kind of a job for coaches to always be kind of vigilant. Like if there's a new guy in your gym and you've never had them in before, always kind of keep an eye on them first when they roll with someone, especially if there's a big weight difference. You know what I mean? Like, especially if that, because again, like it's one thing, like, cause for instance, if that guy was rolling with like a 265-pound guy, he wouldn't have been able to pick him up.
Absolutely.
Like that. And so it's like, it's a little bit less risky, but when you have a big weight difference like that, I'm always kind of cautious. So yeah, I mean, that's the biggie I think that could a coach could do to curb the possible like negative outcomes without having to plaster their gym and with signs like no slamming.
Yeah.
When typically we just accept that. Again, it really goes back to this: what is the purpose of slamming someone when I'm training? It's not going to help either one of us, because if I injure them, they can't train tomorrow. That doesn't help me, right? Like I can't get better. And if you wanted to make a case for slamming, you could sort of maybe take on the judo approach, which in judo, the way that it works is, let's say if you're competing in judo, and from my understanding, they train like this too. Let's say you're doing a judo competition. If I pick you up off the ground and you've got a submission locked in, like an arm bar or something like that, and I pick your body up off the ground into a place where I could slam you, you have to let go.
Mm-hmm.
Because back in the day, what had happened was, a long time ago, people were getting slammed. And so they wanted to make sure that they didn't get spiked on their neck and get damaged. So they basically, when someone gets lifted up, you got to let go. And this is like Dave Camarillo in his book, Guerrilla Jiu-Jitsu. I remember he kind of talks a little bit about this, where he said that when he was competing in like really high level judo tournaments, he would go for his flying armbar, and his goal was essentially to break the person's arm before they could pick him up off the ground. Because again, this is high level competition. These guys are trying to get to the Olympics. This isn't like, these guys are full-time athletes. They're not training for like, hey, I'm going to go train and, for the Naga on the weekend and then go back to my normal job as a physician or something, right? It's like they're in it for everything, and it's a brutal sport sometimes. And so he was trying to break the arms as he's hitting the ground and trying to fully lock it out. And so, because he had to, because if these guys picked him up off the ground, that was it. Right. Then, he would have to let go. And that's the reason. So, if you wanted to sort of throw in the threat of a slam without the damage of it, you could just say, hey, if they pick you up off the ground, you have to let go of the triangle, which would be a perfectly fine rule, I think.
Yeah. I think from what I understand, they had said that guy had there's no signs or inclination that he was, going to be aggressive or not, but like act in that way or do that thing. But I think what can happen is you're at a new gym, or you're stopping by.
Yep.
A young kid who is a lower belt rank than you, who is a kid, all intents and purposes, 14 years old, catches you in something, you might freak out and say, man, I'm a purple belt. They're going to think I suck. You might be thinking about what people are going to think of you. And I think you just panic and you get out the best way you can, or the best way that you think you can.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I think you're right with all the things, like keeping an eye on them and kind of just rolling with them and get their feel. But like, if there's a new person at the gym, for me, and I think you've shared this as well, is you start kind of slow. You don't like hit on the gas. Like I kind of turn on a little bit and see if they turn on back, and turn on here and there. You just kind of almost like it's like you're racing a little bit down the track, and like you speed up a little and they speed up, and then you kind of go back and forth, and then you find like a nice cadence or a nice pace that you can, you're moving at. Sometimes it can be a pretty high pace, but like I think it's fairly controlled because you're kind of accelerating at this kind of, and if you're really blowing past somebody and they're not doing that, like for me personally, I would slow down. I would slow my pace down or my intensity down. So I think like there's definitely a feeling out process, which I think is very, very important. I think some of that's intuitive. As you get to the higher belt ranks, I think you just know how people move, and like you said, you feel the tension, you feel the grip, the tightening, just the like rigidity in their body, and I think that kind of tells you what kind of role it's going to be.
Yep.
So but you have to kind of, I guess, like train in a way that obviously that's not in the rules or for the gym, but expect it nonetheless. Know that it can't happen. And I think to the best of your ability. So.
Yeah, it's almost like I think of it, because you're right. You can almost feel instantly, okay, here's what we're in for by just locking up with someone. But I think of it almost like going to someone's house. So for instance, if I went to someone's house for the very first time, I would not feel comfortable going through their fridge, like going through their cabinets, doing stuff, right? I would be, I'm going to wait to kind of go there. Now, as my friend, maybe I go there a couple times, or as the night maybe progresses, I'm like, hey, I need to get a drink. Oh, you can go in the fridge, go and grab you something. Where's the cups? They're over there in that cabinet. You are now giving me, we're giving permission to me to do these things. And so when you're rolling with someone, as you start to turn it up a little bit and you mutually kind of bring it up together, you're basically giving each other permission. Hey, we're going a little harder now, right? Like let's push it a little bit. And, sometimes if the person is not rolling that way, you can always back off the pedal a little bit. Sometimes if you're rolling with someone that maybe just isn't up to the same skill level, then I mean, sometimes that's going to just simply they become the nail for that day, right? But a lot of times you can do that once you become a little bit more comfortable with the person, because you know that they're not doing it out of something like some sort of malice or something like that. Like, I'm trying to smash this guy here and stand over their
corpse.
Their corpse. I was gonna give it some adjective, some like adjective, but I can't think of one, so we'll just leave it at that. But yeah, that's the idea. So I mean, again, it's one of these things where you shouldn't have to worry about it, because for most people it's kind of just a normal thing. But I did share it with you guys because I know a lot of people listening to this channel or this podcast are within their first. I mean, we actually have a lot of I talk to a lot of black belts when I meet them out in public. The bulk of people in jiu-jitsu are white to purple belts. And so, and we've been me and you have been talking on here for several years. My YouTube channel has been going on for over half a decade at this point. And so I've just realized, like, a lot of people like kind of have been with us for a long time. So with that said, it's just a thing to make sure you chew on when you roll with someone new, and hopefully it'll save you from getting slammed on your dome or possibly hurt because some person maybe just is not in the right state of mind when they roll with you.
And that's kind of what I was like getting at. I think that unfortunately, this kid got hurt, but like there's some good that maybe comes of it. And I think the good would be awareness, for coaches, for students, for new people, because you're always kind of cautious. And even like, I've had some, I think if you're an upper belt, you should be extra like aware of this stuff. Like, I've made the mistake of kind of like playing around with like a blue belt.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes for the blue belts, or even the purple belts, or even like, upper white belts, this is like their world championship match. You know what I mean? Like if you have like a lower belt coming at you and you're a black belt, it's your responsibility to control the roll and control kind of how it, to protect yourself and probably protect the other person and those around you. Cause sometimes, people get they get some crazy movement going and they can, run into other people. So it's your job to control the training environment as well as an upper belt. So like I've started, not always, but I've really started to focus on, if I roll with somebody I haven't rolled with in a while, or I don't really know them very well, like I'm very much like start slow and see how they move. But you also have to like kind of control where the roll goes. You don't want to be so loose with your grips that you let them kind of go crazy all over the place and jumping around.
Right. Yeah. That's something to think about or this is something to bring up, which is like almost always with jiu-jitsu. Like a lot of things that people say in jiu-jitsu, it's like they're like partially true. Like for instance, people will say that the belt doesn't matter. Kind of. There's a paradox with the belt where, it doesn't necessarily matter, but then it does matter, and at the same time, people say, like, they always want to bring up, oh, dude, you need to lose your ego. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's partially true. I get what you're saying, but like, first off, you can't lose your ego. You have
to have it. Right.
You've got it. You're going to have it. You whether you want it or not, you have an ego. If I call you by your name and you reply to those mouth noises, you got an ego, my friend. That's just the way that works. Okay. But the key is to make sure that the ego doesn't rule you and you don't get wrapped up around a particular version of yourself. Like you said, I'm a purple belt, I shouldn't be beaten by a blue belt. That's an ego issue, right? Because your ego's controlling you. But at the same time, a lot of people sometimes mistake like an ego issue with people rolling hard when they're newer. Like, for instance, if I roll with a blue belt and they're going hard at me, they don't, like, most of the time it's not mean. They're not mad at me. They don't have anything negative. There's nothing negative about them at all. What's going on is they're just going, and their nervous system is kicked up because they're going against someone who is technically superior to them. And so a lot of times they have to make up for what they lack in technique with attributes, speed, strength, agility, whatever that they've got. Right. And so, it's one of those things where, sometimes it makes me kind of think, like when someone will criticize a new like a lower belt and say, like, hey, you need to lose your ego. That could be true. It could be that their ego's getting in the way, but it could also be true that the person saying that, it just has an ego, and they're frustrated because they weren't able to just like lay back on their back and calmly control the roll. It's like,
Sure.
and the blue belt maybe made them work a little bit harder than what they were expecting that day, right? So, because to me, whenever someone says like you have an ego issue, it's like almost always I'm like, you're the one with the big ego, because to assume that they have an ego issue and you don't ever have ego issues is incredibly egotistical. And so I just share that, like, so like when you're rolling with someone, don't always assume, especially if you're a higher belt and you roll with a lower belt, don't assume that they're going hard because they're like they think they should win. It's just that their nervous system is kicked up and they can't always control that. Like that's something that happens on a deep, like subconscious level
Yeah.
that you're not always in control of. It's like me, for instance, like when I go into any room, any restaurant, if I'm walking down the street, my head is on a swivel scanning all the time. That's not something that I consciously do. It's something that happens subconsciously because
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I was jumped. And when I was jumped, my body learned this thing of like, hey, people sneak up on you and they'll beat the shit out of you. Okay, so I need to be aware of my surroundings at all time. So if I'm scanning out and I see a guy walk up on me, I have to like be very mindful. My gut instinct is, ooh, this isn't good, right? Like I have to
Yep.
be. I'm a little bit more on guard, and that's my nervous system. I can't help that. That's the subconscious thing. You have to be aware of it. But again, that's a work in progress. And so for also the flip side, if you are a newer person and you're rolling with people and you notice that you get really like worked up when you roll with a higher belt, try to relax a little bit, try to slow down a little bit. Sure, you might get beat up a little bit, you are not beat up, but like out positioned, outworked. That's okay. It's going to happen. But if you're someone that when you roll, people tell you, hey, bro, chill out. If you don't feel like you're going hard, what's probably happening is your nervous system is so kicked up from what's going on. You need to try to take a breath and just relax a little bit, taking a deep breath and try to chill. And if you, for some reason, take big doses of caffeine before training, you may want to lay off of those for a bit so that you can, again, further let your body be less stimulated when you get into the rolls.
Yeah, I think it's about, you brought up the point of kind of, for me, survival. When you got jumped after that, you're like, oh, to survive, to make sure this doesn't happen again, I have to have my head on a swivel. And in jujitsu, like, well, to survive the round or try to do the best that you can, you may not have the skill set, the technique. So you use what attributes you have. It could be your strength, could be your speed, could be your ability to move, cardiovascular fitness, whatever it is. And it might be that you're not in as much of control of your body or the role isn't as controlled, but it's a survival thing. And again, going back, everybody's got an ego, like you said, but what is like a healthy ego, right?
Right.
What's a healthy ego? And some of our ego is tied to our accomplishments on the jiu-jitsu mats. If I'm a blue belt or a purple belt, whatever, I don't want to lose to a white belt. Some of that's ego. Some of that's like, I should be better than them. But some of that's like, well, shit. And everybody gets caught. Like I got caught in something. I got to, my ego's telling me I got to get out of this. I can't tap to this person for whatever reason. And that stuff happens all the time. Like, it's part of jujitsu. You roll enough with enough people, you're going to get caught in stuff. You're like, oh man, I messed up there. I did this. And you usually learn from it. But I think like the ego is like you said, everybody's got it. And now is yours a healthy ego, whatever, you think that is. And maybe Chewy, you have a definition of a healthy ego that you kind of like to think about. But I think it's important. Like you said, it's my response to my name or me putting food in my mouth instead of yours kind of thing. And I think that ego is geared and mixed with the survival of ourselves. So, and you see that on the mats because we're kind of grappling against each other, and you can't bullshit that.
That's right. And one of the things that I think a lot of times higher belts and people that have been training jiu-jitsu for some length of time truly underestimate is the amount of dexterity and control and sensitivity that they have in their bodies.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you watch a brand new person come into jiu-jitsu, it's like watching like a baby deer try to like run or something. It's very clumsily, right? Like, it's just a very all over place. It's like watching a baby try to do things. It's like a baby can't even like can barely control their hand when they're holding a cup. They just drop stuff all the time, right? And they walk and they fall. So when you come into jiu-jitsu, you're developing a dexterity, sensitivity, and this control of your body that we don't develop really anywhere else. And I wouldn't underestimate that, because that's like, you'll hear people talk about hidden jiu-jitsu. That's part of it.
Hmm.
I mean, basically, like, and you can't really teach that. That comes through mat time. Like, so for instance, like in reps. So for instance, like I can feel someone's body move in a particular way, and I already know what they're going to do because my body has recognized that particular movement pattern. When I move around in certain positions, my body has adapted to the sport that I'm doing, and it can easily make these adjustments to these movements. When I fight for grips, I can easily move my hands in a very rapid way to grab grips and just grab them with very precise movements. Now, when a white belt tries that, they might punch me in the face, right?
Yep.
They might be trying to go for a collar grip and their body just malfunctions a little bit and boom, it's like punching me in the face. You could think of it as like sometimes you're chewing food and for some reason you bite your tongue or something, right? It's like your body just malfunctions sometimes,
Yep.
right? I'm grabbing the collar, but for some reason I just punched coach. This just happens. And I think that people as coaches or higher belts or anyone that's in that situation, if you've been training for a while and someone does that, if you have the urge to like get angry at them, relax. Just remember that what you've been doing took a long time to develop. And sometimes, again, this may have not been your problem, but for a lot of people, it takes a while to develop that sensitivity, that
Yeah.
dexterity, and that muscle, that mind muscle connection to where you can make movements efficiently and fluidly and precisely.
Yeah, and we call that in physical therapy terms proprioception. So it's like knowing where your limbs are in space.
Mm,
So knowing where your body, like where you're gonna where your hand is in space. So maybe
yeah.
you don't place it on the mat, you place it on your training partner or whatever, or you know that you
Mm,
can't keep your hand, or just know where you are in space, even when you're going through a transition or a movement of some sort. You're knowing kind of where your limbs are in space without actually having to look and say, "Oh, my hand's here or in a bad spot." And like you said, that's exactly it. Like it's kind of why, like, I saw a video of it was like this jiu-jitsu black belt who's blind,
yeah.
and he was like, just it was like one of those inspirational videos. Like, it's like how is someone that's blind, they can't see where their limbs are going or where they're kind of how they're moving, how do they have a sense, they have a
Hmm.
feel, they have a proprioception in their body, they know where their limbs are in space, what they're grabbing, they've developed those movement patterns over and over. I mean, how can somebody, jump to a flying arm bar or do some of these movements that are very, very fast and very quick because they know their limbs and their body knows exactly where to be and
Hmm.
they've done it so many times. It's there's not like the whole like checking system like, okay, my hand here, good. Okay, now I can do this sweep or do this. It's like automatic. Everything just combines together and it's fluid. And I think it's so interesting like how we develop some of these things. And you can tell in jiu-jitsu, if you can have people that are blind that can be high level black belts, like, that sense of where your limbs are in space is so valuable. And I think it's one of the skills that I feel like we don't touch on as much or we don't talk about as much, but it's definitely something you develop with any sport or any kind of activity that requires some skill.
Hmm. Yeah. There's something kind of along with that is like, there's this like intelligence that you develop in your body and your mind, together, they're all connected, but there's an intelligence that you develop that it almost makes me think of this. So like for instance, if you're listening to this right now, you're listening to me talk, you can actually listen to the words that I'm saying without actually thinking about the exact words that I'm saying, and you know what I'm talking about. You understand the point that I'm trying to make, or you understand the words that are coming out, right? You recognize the words, but you don't have to sit and think about those words for a long period of time. Unless of course the English language maybe is difficult for you. Or maybe you don't like my voice. Otherwise, it's very easy to listen and basically follow along without deeply thinking. I mean, this is why people listen to podcasts in their cars. They're not thinking about the words precisely. They're just listening to what's being said. So along with that, you develop that same kind of thing with your body. Like it was actually this morning. I have these moments sometimes where I'll be rolling and I will do something. And sometimes it's something I've done a million times, sometimes it's something brand new. And today it was something that I'd never really done before, but my body did it automatically and it worked. And I remember being done, I was like, huh, well, that's neat. Like, because it's like, it
Hmm.
just happened. Like, it was like I was moving and it was like my body was doing the movement and my mind was kind of just watching it happen. And I remember going, oh, this is neat. Like, where did this come from? And you develop this intelligence of the body where it just knows. It knows what to do. It just based off of the way things feel. It just starts to know what it does and you don't really have to think about it. Very much like, again, the words that you hear coming out of people's mouths. You don't have to think about everything.
Yep.
You just know. And it's such a neat, like when you get to that point in jiu-jitsu, it's so cool because it's like, then you're just moving and you're at a new level. You've now reached what the, would call like, unconscious competence, right? Like you're at that
Flow
point where,
state.
the flow state, slash you've just gotten so good that you don't have to even think about the fact that you're competent anymore. You're competent. You can just do it. But it's a neat thing because then the body can take you in all these different directions. And one last side tangent. I've never, and this is completely disconnected, but the other night I was thinking about this. There is a side benefit to training jiu-jitsu, especially if you do takedowns and stuff like that, that I don't know if anybody's ever thought about. I'm sure other people have. When you fall down, like in life, not like metaphorically, like literally you trip on something and you fall down, right? Like jiu-jitsu is great for making sure that you don't like hurt. Like I've thought about this. So the other night, so
you don't hurt yourself.
Yeah. So we changed, we rearranged our gym a little bit recently. And we changed some stuff up, but my body has been traveling down these little patterns in the gym for like, a decade or more. And so the other night I flipped off all the lights and I was walking around doing my last check of the gym. And I was walking at what is my normal like position across the floor in the gym. And since we had moved stuff, so I'm walking and I mean, boom, I just catch my body right into the grate of our air assault bike. And like I'm falling and then I like fell over and like I knew how to fall properly, broke my fall with my hand, did a break fall and like my hand was red, but I wasn't hurt, and I knew to keep, and I was able to keep my head off the ground. I remember there was one time I was walking outside and it was really icy. And I mean, dude, I fell back and my feet were up in the air. My chin was tucked and I broke fall. And my hand, bro, it hurt so damn bad. It was red as the morning sun, but I wasn't like knocked out. I didn't hurt my head. I got up and I was completely fine. And I was like thinking about that. I was like, man, how many times have I fallen as an adult and like could have possibly had a serious injury, but I didn't because I had trained jiu-jitsu and I was so used to taking falls and knowing how to fall properly. I was like, man, this is like the side benefit to jiu-jitsu, right? Like, or side benefit of judo and grappling, where you take falls is like learning how to fall properly, opposed to just like eating crap and just landing on your face and really hurting yourself.
Well, we talked about like our bodies kind of becoming more resilient to like some of these impacts. Like, I'm not saying it's going to save you in a car accident, but we had like, Adam had a car accident years ago and like, pretty bad accident. He was like pretty much okay, had a black eye. I was like, I figured him being bounced around on the jiu-jitsu mats, for many years, if that doesn't kind of toughen up your body a little bit, you got to think like you take a judo, somebody does judo, right? And you toss them like crazy and they land and they break fall perfect, right? You take somebody that's not trained that maybe break falls a little bit and you toss,
that's going to break them.
The wind's going to get popped out of them. Bro. Like, it's going to be, I think it builds up that resiliency. Kind of like, if somebody's a boxer and they're punching all the time, they get nice. They probably, I want to look at boxers like hand, like bone structure. I'm sure it's significantly different than just like your everyday person, of course, because just their bone structure,
density and everything else.
Well, yeah, it's called Wolff's Law, actually.
It's called what?
Wolff's Law. WOLFS.
What's that?
So basically it's how to strengthen your bones. So that's why maybe somebody that lifts weights will have stronger bones. Somebody that, if you take impact force, you put force, if you stress your bones, what happens is your body starts to lay down more bone. So that's one of the benefits of like strength training. That's why you have like elderly people and you're like, or women that have osteoporosis, because most women are more likely to have osteoporosis than men, very much more common in women. So you'll tell like women who have osteoporosis, like, they're taking medicine or whatever, brittle bones, and then they go lift weights. And it doesn't have to be super heavy, but if you stress your bones over time, it actually builds, now I'm not saying getting slammed over and over is going to do, but I think it will to some extent, like, because you're doing physical things and you're stressing your body in some capacity. If you're someone that does judo or jiu-jitsu, you're probably doing a little weightlifting and things like that. So, but yeah, you probably have a different bone structure, but that's something that I think it's got some type of play in jiu-jitsu. I think it can kind of build some resiliency.
For sure. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's kind of just a sort of a general rule of life, right? Like, stress is what makes things grow. I mean, it's like it's like that with everything, no matter what. It's like stress of some, like a proper dosage of stress does wonders for the body, right? Whether you get stressed through like the ice bath where you're stressing your body out, you're taking a sauna, stress your body out, you're lifting weights, you're running, you're doing whatever these things that stress your body out. They have a powerful effect that then makes you stronger and more resilient for the future. Even if you've ever like I even thought about, we were talking about this the other day. Lots of young kids these days are not used to engaging in arguments or disagreements in person. Right? Because they don't do it in person. They do it through text messaging and social media.
Yeah.
And so anytime someone in person sort of interacts with them and sort of in a way like that, they don't know what to do. And I'm generalizing here. It's not all people, right? And this also started in my generation as well. And like I was talking to Adam, and Adam was talking about how he used to be a trainer at this job that he did. And the job that they were doing, they had to sometimes like communicate with people that were disagreeing with him or were almost hostile, right?
Yeah.
So he said he would role play and he would be very aggressive with them, like, hey, look, listen here, like, whatever. And they would get really shooken up and they were not used to it. Because they weren't used to having people being confrontational with them in person. Now, I'm sure if they like had a text message their way or, do it on social media, they'd have no problem whatsoever. But in person, they struggle with it. And so, even being able to go through an argument and be okay with that kind of thing and being okay with confrontation and the stress of it could make you more resilient for the next argument. It's just kind of a general rule. Now, there is one thing with like boxing and also being thrown. I think it's one of the most important parts is learning how to relax.
Yeah.
Because for instance, like, when you hear a boxer talk about rolling with the punches, that's not like a metaphor. You're kind of rolling your body with the punches, right? Like you're getting hit and you're trying to sort of go with it rather than get stiff. Because like when you watch people in the beginning, they get really stiff, and when they get hit, it hurts. It like reverberates down to
jars
the bones.
them.
Yeah, it really does, because they're so rigid. Whereas if they get hit, it can absorb the force and they kind of move with it. It's like if you go and watch. If you go to an amusement park and you see like a roller coaster, if you watch the beams that hold everything in place, they move. Because if they made them too rigid, then like the darn things would crack and break when that force was coming through. So they're made to have a little flexibility, a little bit of give. And when you get thrown, it's the same thing. Like when you get thrown early on, you get too tight, you're too nervous about it, and a lot of times it hurts. Whereas over time you get thrown and you just relax and go with the throw, and the specific spots that you have to be more protective of, but otherwise your body can flow with the throw. And if you've ever been to watched a high level judo demonstration, bro, like it's something.
Yeah, they're tossing pretty hard.
Oh, bro, you're like, I feel bad for the uke. Because you're like, dude, that dude is getting launched, and they just know how to go right along with it.
Yep.
Also, a good judoka who's throwing also knows how to pull the thrower at the very end. So even if it does sound really bad, they're actually pulling them up just a little bit at the end to make sure they don't land like full force.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it makes perfect sense. Like, like we talk about motor vehicle accidents, somebody's being more relaxed. A lot of times the person that maybe is intoxicated doesn't get injured because get injured a lot less because they're just kind of moving with everything. Their kind of body's kind of absorbing, in boxing, you gotta think like, it's like you're dispersing that load over increased time. Like, so if they punch you, it's like, not like this, it's like kind of like that. So you're kind of absorbing the load a little bit over a longer period of time. Just physics, Chewy. It's physics.
Yeah. Well, it's like football, right? Football is like, I feel like football is just one car crash over the other or after the other. I mean, it's a rough sport. I mean, like dudes are just getting lit up, and they're these like just suits of armor where they can just bash their bodies into other people. And I remember playing football as a teenager. And the first football game, I was like, if someone hit you, I mean, you were stiff and you couldn't relax at all. Over time, you become more inundated with it, and you just become comfortable with the whole situation. And I, at the same time, I think you're right though, because about the resiliency, because then I think your tissues become used to it too. Obviously your bones, but also even your muscle tissue. Like I remember like the first time that I played football, I would come back with bruises all over me. When you watch like a lot of women, when they first start rolling, like and start training, they look like cheetahs. I mean, they've just got like, they go to work and like everybody's like asking them if everything's okay because they feel like they're getting abused at home.
They probably have like grip like finger grips on
Yeah.
your
It's like, "Is
forearms.
everything okay, dear? Like, do you is everything okay at home?" Like, I mean, and again, I mean, I'm joking, but I'm not joking because that's happened to several of the females in our gym where they've gone to work and someone's like, all of a sudden they're training and they literally have like Eugene saying handprints on their
That's
arms
crazy.
because their body's just not used to that kind of that kind of grip, the kind of power being
Mhm.
asserted on the tissues. And over time, those bruises go away. Their body becomes comfortable with it, and that's that. And they can take it like they can take that kind of punishment from jiu-jitsu all day long, no problem.
You know, Chewy, bringing it back all the way back around
Yep.
to our start of the podcast because we love going on tangents. But like, do you think? And I'm just I was playing around with this idea in my head. Like,
Okay.
should you train slams in some ways? Like, not actually slam, but like if somebody has like if somebody picks you up, like say you're like, all right, guys, we're gonna do jujitsu today, but we're gonna allow like slamming, meaning like if somebody picks you up, you better respond properly. If you don't, they don't slam you actually, but you kind of add that as a component. I mean, obviously, I think that would be helpful in a self-defense situation. If you're doing jujitsu for self-defense, they're
Mhm.
going to train there. Maybe somebody picks you up, like, I got you. You know, you didn't do this or you didn't to kind of train that the instinct, the reaction time, and like just doing the right movements. If knowing it's a possibility.
Of course, I think it would be a great idea. I thought about this idea too. You know, like in my head, I remember playing around with like, oh, should we allow slams? And then just thinking about that, right? And then I'm thinking about like the beginners class, like a white belt class,
Yeah.
where slams are legal,
Yeah.
and just watching like one of
Boom.
the large guy like gets a hold of the little small
Well, you
guy.
don't finish it. You don't
He's
finish
in
the slam. You
he's in
basically,
like what is it? He's in full guard. He's just like picking him up and
yeah,
slamming him on the
yeah,
mat like King
yeah,
Kong. So no, I'm just making a
yeah,
joke.
yeah, yeah.
I understand we're not finishing the slam.
Right.
But yeah, I think it could be a valuable thing. Like say, okay, we're going to train, for certain situations, and then slam will be legal, so be ready for it and respond accordingly. And if this person, just like judo, if this person lifts you up off the ground, you have to restart because you just got knocked out. Like you
Yeah,
just got
yeah,
slammed to the ground on concrete.
yeah,
You are now like gone. Like your
yeah,
head, you've
yeah.
been knocked out. No good. So I think it definitely has value. I think there's value to all of that. Like when I talk about, for instance, self-defense people being like, and they're not all, and again, I'm generalizing again,
Sure.
we're just talking about this, but when I talk about that, it's not to say that self-defense isn't useful. It's not to say that they don't have a point, because they do, but it's one of these things where like, why try to trash other people and just simply say like, hey, maybe it would be a good idea to try it just in case,
Yeah.
or whatever, opposed to like trying to do that. And again, that goes back more to the people that are saying that. That has to do with their own insecurity and the fact that people are always trying to make themselves feel better, right? And like
Yeah.
if you read Ernest Becker's work, I agree with him on this, that people are always striving to raise their level of self-esteem, and we can do this in a myriad of ways, from like accomplishing good meaningful stuff, like we like lose a bunch of weight, we get a promotion at work because we worked our tail off, whatever it is that you've done that you find meaningful, but you do these things.
Right.
But you can also get in a lot of cheap ways, like for instance where like maybe you make fun of someone. That's a cheap way to make yourself feel better self-esteem wise. This is where grammar Nazis come from, like people that are like,
Yeah.
oh, by the way, you spelled it wrong, right? It's like, okay, that's coming from a place of you. That's your own insecurity about yourself, just trying to be project onto other people. It's like the other day I was talking about this in an email. I know this kind of goes way off topic, but maybe it kind of connects a little bit in some way. Like when people make fun of you for something, it has far more to do with what's going on with that person
Yeah.
rather than what it is with you. For instance, like I had a guy one time like make or talk about, I met him in person years later at a tournament or whatever. But basically he told me that when he used to watch my videos, he couldn't stand them because he was like, he saw my messed up tooth, my chipped tooth, and he was just like, God, F this dude, whatever. And like, he's like, he even made a comment about it one time on the channel. And I was like, okay. And then he said, man, then I kept watching your videos and it kind of grew on me. I didn't mind. I was like, well,
Yeah.
cool, man. I'm glad you watched the videos. And he's like, by the way, I have a chipped tooth, and his was covered, right? So
Yeah.
he had his fixed. And, I kind of like pried a little bit and basically came to find out that when he was insecure about it because people made fun of him about the tooth. And so he purposely within like, it's his own insecurity. Same
Sure.
thing with like, I've seen people do this with overweight people where, they'll see someone that I know someone for a fact, they used to be really overweight. Then they got not overweight. And now they despise overweight people. Like if they see them, like they'll get disgusted, right?
Hmm.
And they'll like start to like talk about like, those fucking fat bastards or whatever. And you're like, whoa, like, where did this come from? You know, like, because you used to be overweight. Oh, it's your own insecurity about your being fat. It has nothing to do with the person,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And so that there's that whole thing going on there. I don't know why I got on that subject.
No, I mean it does make sense. It's like yeah, you see
Oh,
something maybe.
going back to us. I was talking about the self-defense thing. So going
Sure.
back to it, there we go. Sorry.
Let's bring this around. This is going to be good, everybody.
We're bringing it
Stay
around.
tuned. He's going to
Bring
pull
it
the car
around
around. Let's
town.
see what happens.
So going back to those people, a lot of times people like to like, oh, see, we're doing it like when they see something like that, we're doing it the right way, you're doing it the wrong way.
Yeah.
We're better than you, right? It's that kind of thing. It's like, look, like for instance, most of us, I don't care what you do. Go do what you want to do. Like if you want to do it this way and enjoy it. Just leave me alone and let me do it the way that I want to do it, right? But people feel like, oh, I got to tell you, by the way, we're doing it the right way, you're doing it the wrong way. So we're better than you. You know, and that again, that comes from their own issues, not yours, you know.
Yeah. No,
All right, guys. So hope you enjoyed today's podcast. As always, try to give you a little lesson right there, front loaded in the beginning. Hope that one serves you well. If you ever find yourself in a situation where that lesson comes into play and you're like, Chewy, like I avoided getting, injured, XYZ, whatever, because you put out that lesson with you and Eugene talking about this, great. Let me know about it. I'd love to hear. Not so much that I'd love to hear about your not so great experience with someone doing that, but that I would love to hear that we were able to help you. And with that said, let's thank our sponsors for help make this podcast happen so that you can hear my lovely voice and Eugene's lovely voice every single week on the whatever podcast app you're listening to us on. As always, thanks to Charles Webb for helping make the podcast happen. Again, if you guys have never tried CBD products before, I encourage you to give them a whirl just to try, see what happens. Currently, right now, as always, I'm always tinkering around with different supplements, tinkering around with different protocols. I'm using CBD alternate days. I'm using it primarily around my hard training days as part of my nighttime recovery, right? So again, it's what I'm using it for, just to play around with it and see what kind of effect that has, opposed to every single day. Not saying you have to do that. That's just kind of me. I'm playing around with it. But again, more often than not, when people try it, they seem to have good experiences with it. I've had a number of you guys that listen to the podcast shoot me messages and say, man, thank you so much. This has been a game changer for me. And they'll say for whatever benefits that they got from it. Again, it's one of those things where because it's not FDA regulated, you can't say that it does this, that, or whatever. But there's a lot of really cool benefits from the product. You can look it up if you're curious about the product. Just do a Google search and see like some of people's anecdotal experiences with it. And if you decide that you'd like to try it, go to charleswebb.com, use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off. And you can add that to whatever you want to get from on their website. And again, that'll help support the podcast and you get a better deal on a really cool product. So check it out. Also, thanks to Epic Roll for supporting the podcast as they have been for several years now. If you guys have never been on Epic Roll's websites, Matt's website, check them out. Again, I was talking about this at the beginning of the podcast, and not sure if you guys were listening to that or not, but at the beginning of the podcast, I was what's that?
So you better be listening.
You better be listening. Who knows? I don't know. I try to make the credits a little bit more fun than just like, hey guys, like
it's what happens. I'll tell you this. Like actually there's like usually a lesson in there. Like we'll start talking and then we'll like just get in a little conversation for a few minutes. So there's usually like a little tidbit of something tangible, like, oh, that's a good idea. That's a cool thing. And then we'll go back to it. So it kind of tricks you guys into listening, so to speak. Yeah.
Well, I try to share stories with it because I find that fun anyway. It's more fun. Yeah. Like, again, this goes back to maybe this is a selfish thing. I don't like doing stuff I don't like doing. And so like, I don't want to do like and you can go to epicrollbjj.com and get all the merchandise and jiu-jitsu or jiu-jitsu merchandise that you want and save 15% off by using the promo code jiu-jitsu. I don't want to do that. It's not really fun for me.
You really can't. We've tried that before. It didn't work out very well.
Yeah, I don't read off of a script very well. I don't read off a script so good. But no, I mean, like for me, I also like sharing stories, and I always have fun like that. I have fun with that. So that's the reason why I do that. And so back at the ADCC 2020, 2022, championships, I met several of you guys that have Epic Roll stuff, and I've actually went to several different seminars over the last couple of years from doing the podcast, and I'll see some of you guys with like Epic Roll gis, rash guards, whatever, and I'll ask you like, where'd you get that from? And they're like, oh man, I was listening to the podcast and I bought it from there, and I talk to people and I ask them about their experience, and I've never had someone, and I'm sure that someone has, because there's always, I mean, like when this stuff gets manufactured, there's always a dud in there, no matter
Sure.
what. And then there's also just negative Nancy's, right? Sometimes you just get people that are just negative people. Like, bro, I remember I was looking on Yelp one time trying to find a restaurant, and I was just clicking through stuff, and I saw that there was a Taco Bell that had like a negative review, and it was because of the quality of the food. I'm like, you're eating at Taco Bell, like. That's your first mistake. Like don't expect like great food when it costs 99 cents. Like that's just it's kind of an exchange.
God, I used to love Taco Bell so much.
I know, but hey, we get older and our stomachs just don't it doesn't agree with us anymore.
No.
And then also, like I like to like try to keep my waistline down a little bit. But anyway, so again, there's always going to be those people. But that said, everybody that I've met in person and asked them about their experience with Epic Roll has always been positive. Like, I love this stuff. Matt sent these cool little notes and stickers and stuff in there like that. It was a really nice touch. Always positive. And so I encourage you guys, if you are in the sort of thinking about getting some jiu-jitsu t-shirts, merchandise, gis, rash guards, whatever it is that you're thinking about, just give his website a look. Just go in there, look through the stuff. I like the designs. He makes high quality stuff. We'll also be making another set of rash guards and shorts with him coming up in the near future. Some more details on that. And again, part of the reason why I trust him to do that is because I think he makes good products. So again, check him out at epicrollbjj.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu for 15% off. And also thanks to our sponsor, Manscaped. If you are a man, or if you have a man in your life that needs to step up their grooming game, check them out. They make really good stuff. Right now, as I'm currently in the process of cutting down in weight for a potential competition. And one of the benefits of cutting down in weight is that you can you start to get more like abby. I can see my abs. I can see my abs pop out more. And so with that, I think Justice does it because I think she likes doing it.
Yeah.
But like Jess, like she won't let my chest hair, my stomach hair get too long. Cause she'll she's like, it's for your abs so you can see them for your pictures. So as part of my diet, my diet plan, I take pictures every week, send it to my coach so that he can see how the diet and workout program is working. Right. And so I've got to take these pictures, and she's like, hey, come here real quick. Let me trim your body here because you need to look good for the pictures. I don't think it has anything to do with the pictures. I just think she likes doing it.
She likes shearing you like a sheep.
She likes shearing me. One of the nice things about that trimmer though, is that there's it's, whatever they want to call it, skin safe technology, whatever. But basically the guard is such that you can take the darn guard off and she can trim me with just directly to the trimmer blade. And she's never nicked me with it once. And in fact, I'll use it on my face sometime just to trim my beard around. And even at the bottom under my neck, I can trim it under there and just push right into the skin and I don't get cut. Now, my old trimmer, on the other hand, it was like a traditional trimmer, you start going, and she's nicked me with that a few times. Not purposely, of course, but just happens. And so that's
not purposely, but she might have been.
Could be.
Maybe.
But it's a nice trimmer, and so I like the trimmer. It's become my go-to for my beard and whatever else gets trimmed. And it's nice too because I can carry it with me on when I travel. So most of the time when I travel, I don't really take a razor with me. I can just use that to just trim the facial hair down low enough that it looks like it's just new. But anyway, kind of going back to it, if you guys want to check out any of their stuff, they make terrific products, high quality stuff for men. Specifically for men, they've got the Lawnmower 4.0, which is the trimmer that I'm talking about. It's an amazing trimmer. You can check it out. And they also have a lot of products like colognes, balms, body washes, shampoos, the whole deal. Everything smells really good. It smells like a good smelling man, right? Again, I'm kind of picky about smells. I want something I don't want something super florally. I don't want something super just weird. I want something that has a good clean smell, and their stuff smells really good, has a nice clean smell to it. And so check them out. And if you do check out any of their stuff and you want to try it and get a discount on it, when you go to manscaped.com, put in the promo code Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off, and you get free shipping with your order. And also, guys, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. along with tons of content. We have tons of stuff there. We're uploading a Patreon. You'll hear random stuff on the Patreon, by the way, because basically what the Patreon is, every guest that we've ever had, we have a little clip with them. And then Eugene and I also have just random conversations where if you'd like to get to know more about us and who we are and what we do, I mean, that would be it. Like I mean, we talk about all kinds of random stuff. I think we had a conversation about our conversation that's going to get uploaded was, what is it? We talked about Warhammer, D&D, Zelda,
Yep. Zelda.
And then we talked about kids having to learn a little jiu-jitsu, like as mandatory as like almost like schooling. So it's just like different stuff like that. But anyway, along with that, there's some different videos and stuff like that included, the random rolls and stuff like that. But one of the nice things that we recently got uploaded on there is a warm-up routine that's about 20 minutes. Eugene took my people through it. The people that did the camps recently at the gym started doing this last year. He took everybody through it. What's nice about this 20-minute routine is that Eugene is a doctor of physical therapy. He is also a black belt. So he knows the body very well. He knows how these different antagonists and protagonist muscles, basically the different muscles that work around each other, he knows how they work. And so I told him, I was like, 20 minutes, bro, make me a warm-up routine for these campers coming in. Let's give them something good that's going to help. And initially he was like, bro, I can't do it in 20 minutes. Like, you can do it in 20 minutes. Because he's like, but it's like all these different exercises that he wanted. I was like, don't worry about those exercises. 20 minutes, cut it off.
Dude,
and
I gotta tell you, like, Josh, who is a boxing coach, me and him are working on some stuff together. I was like, oh God. I told him, I was like, dude, we got to get together. And because there's so much, because everything relates to everything else. But I don't mean to interrupt, but like, it's so hard to pinpoint stuff. But like you said, the whole body functions as a unit, but you get the big hitters, the big time, areas that maybe are problematic. It can help out. So
yeah, I mean, it's like anything else, whether it's like a diet or like you ask a black belt how to solve a particular problem. It's like, oh man, like, geez, like they can just start going down the rabbit hole, right? But it's one of those things where, like, just like a diet, the diet, I mean, you can get off in the weeds with certain things about diet.
Oh yeah, get crazy.
But imagine that you have someone who is just like, let's talk about diet. Let's say if you have someone that's like overweight and they just need to start making a positive momentum forward, right? Well, if they just simply, let's say they cut out processed foods and they make food that they actually have to prepare, like one ingredient foods, right? They're probably going to lose some weight and they're going to feel a hell of a lot better, right? Just making that one simple change, that one rule could change everything. And then for someone like, with like in jiu-jitsu, it's like, sometimes it's like my mind can go off into the weeds and say, man, I can show you a million things. Well, here's one thing that could work for you. Try this out. And they can get some momentum forward, and that can lead to all kinds of other places. And so a lot of people in jiu-jitsu don't stretch, they don't do mobility, and they don't know how. And if they do stuff, they maybe don't do it in the right way, because again, sometimes it's not just static stretching that's really what you need. It's better for us a lot of times to help work in these end ranges and stuff like that. And so with that said, Eugene put together like a little 20-minute routine. It's not the end all be all, but it's a great start where if you follow this routine for 20 minutes, you will feel better. I mean, we've literally had people come in and try this like, oh man, I feel so much better. I feel so much more loose. And, again, if you're really tight and rigid in your hips and your low back and all that stuff, you might experience some relief from it. And then from there, you can always hold those stretches longer, do those movements a little bit longer, and do those different exercises, a little bit more intensely. Or this might also just simply open up the door to you to start to give you a little bit more information to start going down that rabbit hole. But what's really neat about it is, again, if you start doing this stuff, you'll probably go to the gym and find that you have increased movement for your body when you're doing techniques, which is always a nice thing. So anyway, that's my plug for it. It's a really good warm-up routine. Try it out. It's 20 minutes. It's very short. And that's included as a bonus with the Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast.
And you also have real quick, part of the bonus as well is you have a seminar in there, a full-length seminar, which has some butterfly techniques, gi and no-gi techniques, all kinds of stuff. And that's in there as well as part of the bonus. So that thing's super valuable too, because you show techniques in there that you can do in gi and no-gi and some of your best stuff. So that's also included, free seminar.
So check it out, guys. And guys, last but not least, you can join up on my email list if you would like to. I call it the Chew Crew. And inside the Chew Crew emails, you get a daily email from me, sometimes on the weekends, but mostly Monday through Friday. And with those emails, you'll get exclusive offers I don't offer anywhere else on the internet. It's exclusively to the people inside the email group. And along with that, you'll get stories and different ideas on training, little philosophical rambles, all kinds of different stuff. It has a very active reader base. Especially, if you guys are, I know some of you guys that listen to this, you're into this space.
Yeah.
That you're into this marketing space. And again, even for like a marketing thing, because I couldn't send people, hey guys, I've got something for sale. That's not what I do with it. I do offer things for sale, but I like to enjoy what I'm doing. So I like to have fun with the emails and share crazy stories that may have happened at some point, some different ideas that I find useful, books I'm reading, just different stuff. And again, along with joining that, you'll get those emails, and you'll also get access to 3 free ebooks that you can look at. And again, those are just a free gift to you. And then you can unsubscribe at any point if you want, and you get to keep the ebooks for free. So guys, I think that's it. Appreciate you guys being here as always. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and we'll talk to you next week.